Hi, I'm Matt. Welcome to Disney Planning Insights. Through creative content and live shows, we explain the hidden details of the Disney experience so that our clients can execute memorable adventures. Together with Princesses and the Mouse Disney Travel, we have helped hundreds of clients plan, book, and prepare for magical Disney vacations. Let our experience help you avoid common planning mistakes and maximize the enjoyment on your next Disney trip. Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Matt, and this is Disney Planning Insights. If you were on for the pre-show, you understand that things might be a little kind of out of character for the show. Like, I can tell you right now, the shot is super blown out right now. I haven't dialed in a lot of the cameras and stuff, mainly because I haven't done a show since October. Lots gone on. A lot of having to think about, is this something that we wanted to continue doing? And in the end, I decided, I did want to come back. I did want to do this some more and have a lot of fun doing it again. So, I'm going to be tweaking the format a little bit, trying to figure out, what works for us. But no, it's still going to be a news show. It's still going to be very much even more an opinion show now. Because I feel like I have add some value on the opinion side. Anybody can just spit the news. I have a lot of experience in a lot of different areas, to where I feel like some of my opinions might actually carry some weight. Not only have we been going to the parks for 13 years, even more before that, but we've done it a lot of different ways, and we've done it to learn how to do these trips, not necessarily always for the enjoyment, even though we enjoy every one of our trips down there. We do it a lot of different ways so we can understand how the vacations go in a lot of different scenarios. So we're gonna just try this a little different now, and hopefully somebody out there gets some value from it, because if they do, awesome. That's why I'm doing this. I'm honestly, without the attachment to a travel company or anything like that anymore, I really don't have anybody to answer to for my opinions. So we're gonna dish them out, and we're gonna be heavy with them. So let's get into a little bit of the news for this year, and when I decided tonight was the night that I was gonna come back, I had done a lot of different things as far as how far back in the news cycle did I want to go, that kind of stuff. And really what I want to start at is, basically kind of the beginning of the year and kind of some of the things that are happening now. I think news cycle wise, it's been relatively stagnant for about the last 6 months. We've been talking about a lot of the same things. You've got the Dino Land thing. You've got cars going into Rivers of America. You've got the Villains Land rumors. You've got Disneyland Paris, the Adventure World, World of Frozen going in. So a lot of those same things are still what's going on. So let's just, let's talk a little bit about those and kind of get into the nitty-gritty about how this is going to really affect the park. So first, Dinosaur Ride closed over the weekend. Dinosaur, one of my son's favorite rides, even though he was scared to death of it for a long time. He is bound determined to be a paleontologist at some point in his life. And it was just one of those rides, if you know the history of the Dinosaur Ride, it has the same exact track layout as the Indiana Jones ride in Disneyland. And the new version of this ride, when it gets reopened, will be an Indiana Jones version. Now, are they going to change the track layout? Are they going to change the vehicle setup? Anything like that? Who knows? Probably not, because they know that this works with that concept in Disneyland already. But with that being said, we're going to get a new story. We know we're going to get a new story. And by the end of next year, end of 2027, let's keep that in, the back of our minds, that there is going to be a new ride in this space. So, closing weekend for a ride, everybody that hated the ride, never rode it when they were there, decided, hey, we want to ride it one more time, and wait times were over 4 hours for most of the weekend. And there was one very large evacuation shutdown yesterday that I haven't really looked into it to see if they came out and said what had happened. But they ended up evacuating basically all of the lines, doing a ride evac, all that kind of stuff. So, when I first heard about it, the first thing that came to mind was the cucumber lady in Living with the Land. And somebody had unbuckled, jumped off the ride, tried to steal a prop, and they just evacuated the whole building so they didn't have to show an arrest. And I really feel like that probably is what happened. But, who knows? Like I said, I didn't really look into it afterwards. But it was back open for most of the day. When we got to our dinner, we ate about 3 o'clock yesterday. The ride was back open, back over a 4-hour wait time. And it's just one of those things. It's a ride that's closing, so everybody has to get their one last ride. Let's film it one more time because it is super dark and impossible to film, and they yell at you for using any decent equipment. So that makes a lot of sense. I didn't say it at the beginning of the show, but I want to thank everybody that continues to subscribe to the show. Like I said, we haven't been on a live show since October, but yet we've gotten 500 new subscribers since October. So I want to say thank you to everybody that subscribed. And then everybody in the last month that has subscribed, let me move my microphone out of the way. We'll go that way with it. Chasbo, Maritza, Christopher, Rogelio, Kim, Carmen, Wendell, Kelly, Larhonda, and SR Rogers. Thank you guys all over on the YouTube side for subscribing to the channel. Very much appreciate it. All your subscriptions mean a ton to me, and I'm so grateful that I've had the opportunity to do this and provide something to so many people. We had a video last year go over the 500,000 views plateau, and I don't even know, it might even be to 750,000 now. I know it was getting close. I used to stay on top of this stuff all the time. I don't necessarily anymore. But yeah, it doesn't happen without our subscribers and everybody that comes and checks out videos on the channel. So I want to say thank you to everybody that has come and checked out a video on the channel. Happily Ever After is at 590,000 views right now. Robert, long time no see, sir. How you doing? Yeah, it's, so dinosaur closing, that whole equatorial Americas, tropical Americas type land that's opening there is going to be super cool. I think it fits the bill a lot better than a dinosaur land does. Now, granted, dinosaur did have a place in the lore of Animal Kingdom, and so did Pandora. I mean, they had always talked about, beasts of past and present and beasts of mythology. So, with that being said, everything that was there made a whole lot of sense. Let's get on to the next thing. my thoughts on Dinosaur. Dinosaur as a ride was okay. It gave Animal Kingdom another one of those kind of mid-tier rides that made sense for that area. You would have had, the prehistoric spin and that kind of stuff over there, and it gave you a thrill ride over there. You had Everest. They gave you a thrill ride in the Asia section, and then you had the stuff that was in Pandora. So it spread out the park pretty well. But with that being said, I don't think you're going to gain or lose much with this being an Indiana Jones version of this ride. I mean, give us some good visual effects. Give us a decent story. Give us a queue line. Give us a queue line like the one in California. I think that is where you could do the most on the upgrade of that ride, is cover 3/4 of that outdoor queue area. And that gives you a completely different feel to that ride. And it gives you more shade at Animal Kingdom, which it desperately needs. You need more indoor, you need more air conditioning anyway there. And that would give you that ability to extend air conditioning. So, no, I think that works out well. Let's get to topic number 2. We're going to talk about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge upgrade at Disneyland. Now, this is something that I think is really cool, and I think this is very much a test pilot for what's going to happen at World as well. But they are going to bring some of the classic trilogy characters to Galaxy's Edge. So we're talking about Vader and Leia and Luke and Han, which is going to be really cool. I think that makes a lot of sense. If you're going to have the Mandalorian and you're going to have Chewbacca there and you're going to have R2-D2 there, yes, these are all characters that kind of cross all of the genres and all of the trilogies, but I think having those original trilogy characters there as well, because other than Kylo and Vader really not existing in the same space, I think all the other characters work. So, no, I think that's going to be really, really, really cool. I think it expands your fandom, because I do think that there were some Star Wars fans that stayed away from these areas because that they omitted a lot of the classic trilogy characters. I think you're going to have some separation. You're not going to have Vader walking with Kylo Ren. It doesn't work. The whole Han and Leia with Kylo Ren thing. Yes, they all exist together, but in the way that they have them at the park, they may not exist in the same time period. If they do a young Leia and a young Han, you can't put a Kylo Ren in there. It's got to be Ben. And if you don't have a Ben, it doesn't work. So, yeah. So, new Soundscapes debut April 29th of this year, which is cool. Those areas are super neat if you're a Star Wars fan. They are exotic if you're not. And I think, I likened it to Pandora on a level, because it's just one of those things that just, for some people, it's not on their radar. And it doesn't have to be on their radar. But it's something that works well in the parks for that fandom. So, I think it's going to be cool. So, yeah. Disneyland Abu Dhabi confirmed for Yas Island. So, Yas Island is this kind of tourist destination in Abu Dhabi. So it has different rules. So there's already a lot of things on this island that are kind of foreign entities, and it's where F1 comes and they do their race at Yas Marinas on Yas Island. Um, it's it is 100% a money play to try and get tourism to the Middle East from Western civilization. There are unique challenges to building this park. And I'm very interested to see how they tackle those challenges. One of them being the extreme heat. It's almost a park that has to be 80% indoors. Definitely covered. Lots of fans. I think you have some rides that will spike out of your canopy, but I think for the most part it is a full canopy park. I'm interested to see how it works. I think this globalization of Disney, in some ways has worked really well, in other ways has worked very poorly. But I'm interested to see in this area of the world how something that is as very American as Disney parks are, how that works. Because they are bending a lot of rules and a lot of religious rules on this island to make these things work. So, I think you're gonna see and let me preface this. I think this park goes a couple of different ways depending on who succeeds Iger, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But I really, really think that it is one of the biggest challenges with this park is how do you make it Disney without it being very cloney. And Disney has had a problem with that over the last couple of decades of just saying, we're going to copy rides that have worked in other parks and jam it somewhere into this park. That's what they did with Tron at World. The whole Galaxy's Edge experiment, they are absolutely identical lands in Land and World. So it's just very interesting to figure out if they're going to do that. Now, I think if Damaro is the new CEO, this is going to be a very, very sterile, cloney park. I think if you have anybody else take over, I think you see a different direction, and I think you might see a lot of innovation at this park. They're going to throw the money to have the biggest and best, and I don't know that they want a bunch of clones over there, because the people that are visiting this park have the money to visit the other parks around the world. So you're not giving them something new if it's just a clone park in a different part of the world. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing. Sweethearts Night, best Disneyland event. I love the after hours events for a lot of different reasons, Robert. I'm a big unique character person. And I know that might sound kind of weird, but I really, really enjoy seeing some of those hard to meet characters. And I think those after hours events, whether it's, the different nights that they do at Disneyland or the after hours events that they do at the parks at Disney World, it gives you that ability to see some of those characters. And they say lower crowds. Yeah, they lower the crowd, but they also kind of squeeze the park a little bit on you. So it still feels relatively busy, especially if you're, trying to meet a character that is uber popular. But it's still it's still a group of those neat events that gives you that opportunity. Okay, let's get into a change in CEO for Disney. We've known this is going to happen for about a year and a half now. When Iger came back after the whole Chapek fiasco, he had an expiration date, very much so. So for him to now kind of be probably in the last few months of his leadership, he's going to go out with the legacy of kind of that penny pinch mentality when it came to the guest experience. He's going to be the one that was known for getting rid of Magical Express. He's going to be the one that is known for getting rid of Fast Passes. He is the one that is going to be known for getting rid of a lot of guest experience items and not giving a whole lot of return on what was taken away. I'm on the boat right now that I think Magical Express comes back by the end of the year. I think it's one of those things that they are beginning to understand the impact of not controlling that transportation has. And it's a really weird number to even think about, but when you look at what they brought out, year over year attendance was up 1%, year over year capital spending was up 4%. Those are pretty poor numbers. You could say, well, they had better attendance. It took a monster fourth quarter to do that. Monster fourth quarter. And we had talked about all year how attendance had been down. And I still think if you look at it from the spectrum of what was the actual paid attendance and not the comp attendance, I think year over year it's down. So that gives you an idea of, I think Disney's on a little bit of a downward trend when it comes to actual attendance. But it shows you what they've done to the actual guest experience to have almost a 5% growth in revenue, capital spending from those people that came. And what does that mean? Well, that means that they're buying Genie Plus. That means that they are, paying for things, at a higher cost. You look at the dining plans, you look at the hotels, you look at basically everything. Everything is more expensive right now. And B, I think they don't have a whole lot of other options, especially with families, right now, overall income across the board is down. And these families that are using their expendable income, I think you see two different roadmaps when it comes to Disney planning right now. One of them is we want to get down there, we want to do as much as we can, we want to spend as little as possible. The other one is we're going to go down and it doesn't matter what it costs, we are going to do whatever we want. And there's not a whole lot in the middle right now, which is weird to even think about. But as I think about that statement, I think about my family. My family was very much we were very much for planning fast passes, vehemently against the multi-pass system. So it didn't matter to us that we weren't doing things because we weren't paying for them. And our last trip, we drove down. Now, did we stay at nice hotels? We did. We splurged and spent a few nights at Animal Kingdom Lodge. But we also spent time at Pop Century. We also spent time at the Drury at Disney Springs. So it was one of those. It was a weird trip in a few different senses, but we did it to be cost effective. We bounced back to Animal Kingdom. When we decided to extend our trip, it ended up being kind of in when we had a falling out with the travel company, and things happen. But we made it work for our family, and I feel like my family's kind of in that middle ground. But we weren't chopping at the bit after that trip to book a bounce back. Because we knew the construction that was getting ready to happen at 3 of the 4 parks. But we also really didn't see the value in that experience. So, are we looking to go this year? Yeah, we might at the end of the year. But is it something that we're like, hey, we've got our next 3 trips planned like we used to? No, not even close. Now, what that brings me to is, with Iger stepping down, it means we're going to have a change in leadership. And the front runner right now is Josh D'Amaro. Josh D'Amaro is the president of Walt Disney World right now. He is kind of the heir apparent and kind of the mentee to Iger. Iger has kind of brought him up from the beginning and kind of groomed him to come into this role. Now, what does that mean? I think you get a lot of Iger, for our Democratic friends out there. I think this is a whole lot of Joe Biden, and you have Obama in the background. It is one of those things where I don't know that D'Amaro is going to have the autonomy to make changes in the way that he may want to make changes, because of what he's following and what has been put in place prior to him starting in this role. So, what does that mean? I think it means more of the same. I would love to see somebody come in and in their first month say, hey, we made a couple of mistakes, and here's how we're going to right them. We are going to bring back fast passes to guests that stay at our on-site resorts, not at our good neighbors, at our Disneyland, our Disney World resorts. The other thing we're going to do is bring back Magical Express, and they are going to be free of charge. And we want people getting off the plane, beginning their vacation at Walt Disney World, keeping their vacation at Walt Disney World, and then leaving from Walt Disney World and going back to the airport. We don't want any of this resort hopping and, park hopping from here to Universal to Legoland to everywhere else. We want people to stay within the bubble of Disney when they come to Orlando. And I think Magical Express does that for you. What do you do on the FastPass side? You give a family 2 free FastPasses every park day that they have. They have to schedule it just like they would schedule on the Lightning Lane setup, and they get 2 free. And if they want to purchase Lightning Lane or a single pass for one of your top tier rides, on top of that, they can. You leave your single pass rides out of it, so your Trons and that kind of stuff, you leave those out of it, and you give some value back to the people that are staying on site, that are using Magical Express, that are doing the things that they want to stay in the Disney bubble, and they're spending the premium to stay in the Disney bubble, but you're not giving that stuff back right now. Are there other options for CEO? There are. Another one of the parks leadership team is in the running. But it's one of those things that it's just, I really feel like you're going to see a lot of the same if it's tomorrow, and that's really, for me, that scares me quite apart. So Damaro is now chairman of Disney Experiences, oversees Disney parks and resorts and hotels, United States, Europe, Asia, according to the official website. So he's, because Valley's now Walt Disney World. They don't give any of the other people. I really think that they're just kind of pushing towards Valley. Some bonus content. Let's talk a little bit about some other things that are going on. Frozen Ever After animatronics update. So, Frozen Ever After and Epcot had those real creepy projection faces. They are getting changed to look more like the ones in Disney Hong Kong, with the true animatronic faces. That is currently happening right now and should be reopening relatively soon. I didn't think that was going to take too long. What does Attractions Magazine say? Stop. Sometime in February 2026. So, sometime this month should reopen. I think they could have done most of the work in the background in the shop before they put those on. So, I don't think it's a whole lot of big things. Epcot Flower and Garden Festival going on right now. Festival of the Arts is going on right now. Flower and Garden is coming. Festival of the Arts is happening, and one of the cool things with Festival of the Arts, that's going on right now is the Lorcana events that they are doing. These are the first real Lorcana events at Walt Disney World. You know, you had some smaller ones, but this is like a big deal. You're having some collection quests. You're having a scavenger, or not a scavenger hunt. You're having a seek and find, and you know they're giving away some top-notch cards with these events. So that's really a really cool thing to see how they're integrating this more and more into the parks. One bad thing I've heard, and I haven't seen it like official anywhere, but there has been some talk about characters refusing to sign Lorcana cards. And one of the things that my mind went to when I heard that was, you know, when we went down, so when we started our collection and we decided that we were going to start having characters sign the cards, we had made a decision pretty early to say we were not going to have any of the fur characters try and sign these cards. Because with their costumes, it would have been almost impossible for a lot of the characters. How small the cards are, you know, we had talked about putting them on like a clipboard or something like that to where they could have the clipboard to sign the card on. But still, it didn't make a lot of sense. It's a very small surface to sign. I mean, it's a playing card. It is what it is. So the fur characters, I think, have a real problem signing it. And I think that you have a lot of people now that are walking up to these characters with collections of cards, not just one, which would make sense, but they're walking up with 5 or 10, or, you know, hey, we got this new collection quest card from Epcot today, and we want to have it signed. And now you have a lot of people holding up the lines to have these things signed. So it's taking away from guest experience. I think if there was some respect from everybody and just said, you know, make it no different than it's signing, the character signing your kid's autograph book. One signature per person. You know, if your kids get their autograph book signed and you want to have a card signed, that's fine. But don't have the character sit there and sign every version of the Elsa card that's been put out. You're holding up the line. And I think that's the biggest thing that they're worried about. Let's see, what else is going on at the parks? Wow, these are just falling apart. Muppets are taking over Rock and Roller Coaster. This thing that I'm looking at says rumored. It's not rumored. It's happening right now as we speak, and we have pictures of it. So it is nowhere near a rumor. But what is that going to mean? Well, it means that you're taking a pretty unique experience in the Aerosmith Rock and Roller Coaster experience, and I don't want to say cheapening it, because I really feel like there is a thirst for the Muppets at the parks. I don't know that this is the best way to do it. The ride's not going to change a whole lot. They're going to add some Muppet stuff in it. They're going to rework the pre-show. It's going to be the same ride. It's just going to have some different things to look at. Some different music, probably. It'd be hysterical if Electric Mayhem just plays Aerosmith songs. Like the whole, like, Jimmy Fallon preschool instrument type thing. But, you know, I don't think it's going to be anything like that. I think it's going to be more of a, you might have some original music, which would be cool. And then I think you've got, this whole, well, what happens now that, Muppets 3D is gone in Hollywood Studios, over back in the Grand Avenue area. And I think you see a little bit of a shift, and we're going to talk about one more thing here because I really think it ties in pertinently here. I think you see the villain show move to Magic Kingdom. You see the Monsters Inc. show move to Hollywood Studios. And then you see Muppets 3D move next to Rock and Roller Coaster. And that becomes a permanent house for a new Muppets 3D show. So why I say there was another pertinent story. So last week, Disney released some architectural drawings of where the buildings are going to be for Cars Land and for Villains Land. In Cars Land, there are two show buildings, it looks like. One is going to be the Piston Peak building. The other one is probably going to be the smaller ride, the second ride that they had talked about when they announced the land. Villains Land was a little bit more intriguing because there were 4 buildings over there. And the more and more that I thought about it, the more and more I came to the conclusion that you're going to see it happen in this way. Building number 1 is huge. It's a monstrous building. It's about 3 times the size of the Haunted Mansion show building, and I think that's going to be an indoor dark ride. I don't think it's going to be a roller coaster. I think that's going to be your answer to Monsters Unchained, Disney style. I think it's going to be a huge Omnimover dark ride or a huge trackless dark ride like Rise of the Resistance that goes through villain stories. The second building is going to be where the villain show ends up. The other 2 buildings are train stations. One is a train station for the Magic Kingdom Railroad. The other is the train station for the Maleficent roller coaster. A lot of people were confused at having 2 very similar long rectangular buildings that weren't really big enough to be show buildings. But I think that being the load station for the Maleficent coaster makes a lot of sense. Then you have a train stop at Villains Land, puts it behind Haunted Mansion, makes a lot of sense. So then you'll have them at Main Street, you'll have it at Splash Mountain, Tiana's, you'll have it at Villains Land, you'll have it at Casey Jr., and you'll have it again at Main Street. Makes a lot of sense. And then with the expansion of these 2 new areas, you end up getting 4 rides and a show, which is probably just a reworked Unfairly Ever After, even though that show is fantastic and they could just move it as it is to Magic Kingdom, and it plugs in really well. D23 is going to be interesting this year to hear what Villains Land is going to be. They have to give you the details this year. We've got show buildings. We've got a rework of the Haunted Mansion queue. It's happening. You need to tell us what's going to go on. So I think that comes out. I think you see a lot of construction and a lot of speculation, and then at D23 they spill all the beans. So with that being said, you see some very defined areas. You'll have the Monsters Inc. area, at Hollywood Studios. You will have a Muppets area at Hollywood Studios. Again, you will have the Villains Land and the Cars Land at Magic Kingdom, which is the Beyond Big Thunder Mountain, which I think they have moved projects that were going to be part of that to Animal Kingdom. I think the whole Encanto Casita and an Indiana Jones ride were initially Beyond Big Thunder Mountain, and then, you know, the revamp of Dino Land to Tropical Americas made a lot more sense. So, whoa, that's a huge drop. I am probably all over the place right now. What is going on with my settings? Okay, it equaled out, but man, it looked like trash for a second. It went like way down. My bitrate went way down and then shot through the roof and then caught up, and then I didn't drop any frames, but it just looked weird. But so yeah, so lots going on. So what does the future of the show look like? I don't know. Next week, I'm probably not going to do a show. The week after that, I'll take a look at the news and see if it makes sense to do a show that week. I'd like to try and do 2 shows a month. Maybe do a news show each month and then do some other form of content each month. Whether it be, you know, travel opinions, whether it be a deep dive into something that's going on at the parks. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Yeah, but, you know, there's a lot of things that Disney is still a big part of my life. I still continue to enjoy Lorcana. So I have a lot of things that I can talk about with both of those. So, yeah, I think this is something that's going to continue to happen and continue to move forward. So, hopefully, if you came and saw the show today, you enjoyed something from it. And we'll see you here maybe in a couple of weeks. So, with that being said, thank you very much for watching tonight. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell if you want to be notified. Every subscriber, I appreciate so much. Every follower over on Twitch, you know, we do this on Twitch as well. You know, we have 1,585 subscribers over on YouTube. We have 31 followers over on Twitch. I don't know what I want to do on the Twitch side. You know, I had really big plans of expanding the Lorcana portion of the show and really doing a lot with that on the Twitch side. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We've got 2 events here locally this year. Big events locally this year. I might cover those and see how that goes. But, you know, with that being said, thank you guys all again for watching. Thank you guys all for liking, following, and subscribing to the show. And, you know, share it out. Let your friends see something different. And I will see you guys here in a couple weeks probably. Good night. You know, this back section is all going to be reworked at some point. Guests are probably going to be few and far between, but if we do have one, this is probably where I'll talk about them. Again, you're going to see a lot of a reduction of all of the Princesses and the Mouse stuff on the channel because we are no longer affiliated with them. But if you want to find us on Facebook, at DPI Podcast over on Facebook. On X, you can find us at Disney Insights. On Instagram, we are Disney Planning Insights Podcast. You can find us on all three of those, and then YouTube and Twitter. Thank you guys all for watching, liking, sharing, subscribing, everything that you do to support the channel. We appreciate you.